Oxfam estimates that the wars in Darfur, the Congo and Iraq are responsible for killing around 750,000 people a year. But this represents only a fraction of those killed and raped today in the world's 31 major conflicts. Most are unreported outside their country's boundaries. The 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights promised everyone the right to life, liberty and security, but 60 years on that promise remains unfulfilled.
For Oxfam, it's incredibly important that every citizen of the world is treated equally and each conflict is treated equally. The current situation is untenable, where some countries, some conflicts get the oxygen of publicity and a lot of diplomacy put into them. For example, recently in Georgia. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got the Democratic Republic of Congo, where you've seen 1,500 people dying every single day in that conflict, and yet minimal attention to it by the world's press and by the world's politicians. So we would like to see each emergency treated with the same level of seriousness and the same action taken to protect civilians.
Governments in other countries can help reduce the atrocities by making the protection of civilians the highest priority response in conflicts, by acting quickly and by joining together to provide more effective action at every level.
Now is a real opportunity. You're seeing the growing strength of emerging powers like China, like India, are beginning to get more involved in foreign policy debates, and they need to really grapple with the fact that they can play a really active role in protecting the civilians around the world in the many conflicts we hear about, like Afghanistan, like Iraq, but also the many other conflicts that don't make the headlines. So it's about these powers stepping up to the plate and acting with the older powers to protect civilians.
Recent actions have shown how powers such as the UN can work together at the first signs of unrest to limit atrocities and war crimes on civilians and reduce the risk of renewed or future conflict.
A good example would be Kenya at the end of last year. We had terrible violence after the elections, and we as Oxfam and many others were deeply worried about that country sliding into a state of war. Instead, you saw negotiation, you saw serious heavyweights like Kofi Annan getting involved, and the major powers really acting to protect Kenyan citizens, Kenyan civilians from a much graver situation. So that's an example of how, when powers do act, it really can make a difference to people's lives.
Oxfam feel it is vital to act on the root of these conflicts now. Failure to invest in peace around the world could have devastating consequences for everyone, with growing inequality and climate change only exacerbating problems.